14th, 1948, David Ben-Gurion fulfilled his lifelong dream. Supported by a United Nations resolution, he declared the founding of the State of Israel, Israeli parliament in Tel Aviv. Dayan rejoiced that the new nation was born, but within hours of Ben-Gurion's proud declaration, Israel was in peril. That same day, the surrounding Arab countries launched a full-scale attack. A massive military force threatened to engulf the new nation. As Syrian tanks advanced, Moshe Dayan was named commander for the Jordan Valley sector. He was assigned to defend the Degania settlements where he had been born. With the fate of the Jordan Valley and Israel itself hinging on the battle, Dayan decided the tanks had to be stopped at all costs.
When we were attacked by 7 Arab countries with their regular forces, with tanks, planes and guns, and we had to hold them with our bare hands. And the only way for them to do it was to dig a ditch here, to wait here with their Molotov cocktails bottles until the tanks came very close to them, 5 yards or so, and then to throw the bottle, to knock it on the tank, to set it on fire, and to hold the Syrian attack.
Dayan would serve on many fronts in Israel's war for independence. Yet, ironically, Moshe Dayan's most painful mission of the war would not pit him against the Arabs, but against his own people. In June 1948, with Israel's war for independence raging, Moshe Dayan would find himself fighting fellow Jews on this beach north of Tel Aviv. Israel faced an internal threat. The militant Irgun faction under Menachem Begin was maintaining their own army, challenging the authority of the new Israeli state. David Ben-Gurion ordered Dayan to stop the Irgun from smuggling arms to their forces in Israel aboard the SS Altalena. On the beach, Dayan's troops clashed with the Irgun in a firefight that left 14 men dead. After Dayan reached a ceasefire agreement with Begin, 300 Irgun soldiers surrendered. But negotiations quickly broke down. The Altalena escaped to Tel Aviv. There, the ship would be targeted by Israeli artillery. Echoes of the incident would haunt Moshe Dayan and the Israeli nation for years.
My heart was very heavy. It was a very dark day for me. For me to fight Jews, to kill Jews, and that some of my men would be killed by other Jews. When we were at war with the Arabs, I never thought that anything like that would happen with me. But we've just had a new state. And now to start with that kind of a split, 2 armies, 2 headquarters, 2 leaders, fighting different wars, and maybe one day one against the other. So I thought that Ben-Gurion was right. He shouldn't have allowed it. Whatever the price for that would have been, including my personal, very, very deep sorrow and horrible feeling about that operation.
The war for independence ended 10 months later. It cost the Israelis 6,000 lives, but their sacrifice had helped to forge a new nation. By the war's end, in 1949, Dayan was named commander of the Jerusalem Brigade. Negotiating with Colonel Abdullah El-Tel of Jordan, he cut through red tape and protocol to hammer out the complex details of peace. A speaker of Arabic, Dayan established close rapport with El-Tel and set up the first hotline in the Middle East. Singled out by Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, Dayan rose swiftly through the ranks, from colonel to chief of staff of the Israeli army in only 4 years. In 1953, as chief of staff, Dayan was still living dangerously. A constant subject of gossip, he seemed hell-bent on breaking the rules. Dayan drove recklessly and dug for antiquities in defiance of government policy. But most disturbing to the leaders of this religious state, Dayan, a married man with 3 children, made no secret of his numerous affairs.
I was approached about it once even by Ben-Gurion. And when I was the chief of staff, he told me it had to do with my attitude with women. And he told me, you have to remember that you are the chief of staff, and you should serve as an example. So I told him, if I have to serve as an example, I cannot be a chief of staff.
Dayan's private life might have been less than exemplary, but no one questioned the example of courage he set on the battlefield.
I never sent any soldier on any mission that I myself was not really ready, not theoretically, but practically ready to go and do it. Never.
Under Moshe Dayan's leadership, the armed forces were sharpened to a razor's edge. Through rigorous training, he instilled in the entire Israeli army the spirit of an elite commando unit. Morale soared. Dayan singled out one man who embodied his vision of the ideal Israeli soldier, Meir Har-Zion, a hero of border skirmishes with the Arabs. In typical defiance of regulations, Dayan promoted him to officer without even making him attend officer candidate school. Har-Zion's daring, ingenuity, and personal initiative were exactly what Dayan's innovative commando tactics required. Dayan called him the bravest soldier he ever knew. When Har-Zion was critically wounded in 1956, Dayan kept vigil by his bedside and wept. After Har-Zion's recovery, they would become lifelong friends.
Har-Zion, the farmer, the soldier, I really think that he preferred, and that was the best part of him, to do the fighting alone. Very often he told his men in a company or a section to stay behind, and he just crawled into the enemy's position and threw the hand grenade and came back and said, it's over.
Dayan set high standards for his commanders as well. He insisted that officers lead their men into battle and ordered them to take paratroop training. As chief of staff, Moshe Dayan was also preoccupied by the constant threat to the Jewish settlements on Israel's frontiers, which were vulnerable to terrorist attack. Infiltrating from the Gaza Strip, Arab groups targeted Jewish farmers, carrying out acts of sabotage and murder. One of those who died in the bloodshed, however, would hold a special meaning for the people of Israel. In April 1956, Roy Ruttenberg, a young Israeli, was killed in an Arab attack near the Gaza Strip. Dayan would deliver the eulogy, a plea for renewed vigilance. But he would also spark fierce controversy throughout Israel by calling for compassion towards their enemies. Dayan said, "Let us not this day heap blame on the killers. Why rail against the hatred felt for us by Gaza? It is the hatred of people who for 8 years have been watching us turn into our possession the land and villages where they and their fathers had dwelt. We should hold ourselves responsible for the murder of Roy, not the Arabs of Gaza." Dayan's army would soon face its first critical test. In 1956, Egypt's power was strengthened by formidable Soviet weaponry, and a charismatic new leader, Gamal Abdel Nasser, whipped the Arab world into a frenzy, vowing Israel's destruction. Sparking an international crisis, Nasser seized the Suez Canal and threatened Israel's survival. October 29th, 1956. Acting on a bold plan conceived by Dayan, 400 Israeli paratroopers dropped into the strategic Mitla Pass, just 30 miles from the Suez Canal. Acting in concert with British and French airstrikes on Egyptian bases, Dayan's forces then unleashed a massive armored lightning thrust across the vast Sinai Desert. Dayan stayed on the front lines in the heat of battle. He chose to be among his men to inspire them with his confidence and courage. In less than a week, it was over. Egyptian